Welcome to Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. We get started every week with a saying of the day. Chancellor, what do you have for us?
Saying of the day is very appropriate for today, and that's turn around, don't drown. And you've heard that someone came up with that a few years ago, and it's something you always have to remember. And if you get into an area where there's water and it's running very high, if it's 2 feet or something, it'll take a car or bus or even a truck. One of the things that got swept off the road last weekend, July 4th, flood, was a fire truck. Mm-hmm. And you'd think, that's big enough that it wouldn't. But when you're dealing with Mother Nature, don't contest it. Try to stay away from it. And I wanted to say a few things about Trump's bill passing and a couple of people. One we had on our show, Jody Arrington. He sponsored that bill. His name is the first name on that bill. Mm-hmm. And that he did a great job. And you also have to, Speaker Johnson. I tell you, I've been really impressed. I thought he'd do okay. I thought he'd be good, but he's been real good. Because when you've got a margin of less than 6 votes, you can't afford to have very many mistakes. And he's had people disagree with him, but he hadn't gotten in fights with them. And, that's not true on the prior speakers. And that he's kept his demeanor, and that I've really been impressed with him. And that he stood by certain things and didn't let people, scare him into positions that he would normally take. But he's had a calming effect on the Republican caucus in Congress, and they needed that. So he's done a great job, and I think he'll be elected Speaker again without any problems if the Republicans control. And if they don't, then he'd be minority leader. But I've just been really impressed with the job he's done.
You mentioned Congressman Arrington. I would highly recommend people go back into the library of episodes and listen to that and what he said, because during that interview, he said, "This is my Alamo."
Yep.
And he won.
He won. And the president, when he was in Iowa, gave him a big shout out and thanked him and has talked about it at the signing, mentioned him. And Jody was there at the signing. But they ought to go back and did he do
2 episodes?
He did 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Ought to go back and look at that. Look it up in the library, or how do they do that?
Just scroll down wherever you get your podcast. Just scroll down and you'll see 2 episodes labeled Congressman Jody Arrington. And whether it's on Spotify or on iHeart or iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, just scroll down and you'll find it. Or if you just do a Google search of Kent Hance, Jody Arrington, it will show up.
Okay. That's good. Mm-hmm. No, Jody, he really gave us a lot of insight what he was doing on that bill. And so it's good to see that, less than a couple of months later, he passed the bill.
I like his courage, too, to take this on. This is big.
Oh, it's huge. It's going to have a big impact over the next 10 years. And that he went after it. And he and Johnson came in at the same time and have been very close. Mm-hmm. And that they had a good class that year, and so he's got a lot to.
I think he listened. I think he listened to you at commencements when you said "Dream no little dreams."
Yeah, dream no little dreams, and push. I said, when he went to Congress, told him, boy, I used to yell at you, push, and you yell back, yeah, we're trying. And I said, you're going to have to do that a bunch in Congress, because there's always something else to do. Mm-hmm. There's always something to get you sidetracked because there's so many problems. And most of the time, Congress, they don't address a problem until it gets real bad.
Yeah.
And they put it off. And I, with the deficit, this has to be addressed at some point in time in the next few years. It's just going up and up and up. Mm-hmm. The floods last weekend, the July 4th weekend, it was just devastating what happened along by Hunt in Kerrville, Texas. One of my friends that we've talked about on the show before, Robert Brown, his house was flooded in Kerrville. He was living in Dallas, but he had a ranch house there in Kerrville. It's real nice. And he said it's just full of mud.
Yeah.
And swept paintings off the wall, and just was very damaging.
Chancellor, for people that are listening that are not familiar, we have people listen all over the country and all over the world. I think we should take a minute and explain what the Texas Hill Country is like and how these types of floods, that area, part of Texas, is prone to flooding.
The area is rock. You don't have a lot of topsoil. It's not like East Texas and West Texas, and you do a lot of farming, and it's too hilly to farm, and there's no topsoil. Mm-hmm. And so when that rain hits, it goes fast. When the rain hits, it goes down the banks of the hills.
It's just rock.
It's just rock, and it goes right into the streams. And you will not have a long time that the river will be up, but it may jump 20, 25 feet. In some instances, last time, 32 feet. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking you're standing there, and 3-4 hours later, the water's 32 feet above what it was. And one of the things that makes this so critical and dangerous in Texas, in the hill country, is it's close to the Gulf, close enough that you'll have a hurricane that may come in and stall and become a tropical depression, and it just won't move. And in the hill country, it doesn't move that much because there's all the hills. And the number one, I went back and looked up the 10 biggest floods in the history of Texas, and number one was in Thrall, Texas. And Thrall's a little town north of Georgetown, which is north of Austin. And the Thrall flood was in 1921, and they had 215 were killed, and it was a tropical storm. One thing I found out when going back and looking at the 10 biggest floods in Texas and the 10 biggest floods in the nation, tropical storms are the biggest problem that you have. We had one time I was going to Louisiana, to DeRidder to Louisiana. A hurricane had come in Louisiana and turned into a tropical depression. We dodged thunderstorms all the way to DeRidder. And when we came out of the clouds, it was pouring down rain, in the runway's supposed to be right in front of you, and it wasn't. It was over to the west about a mile and a half, and he just did a fighter pilot turn to the right, banked to the right, and then lined up and banked to the left and set it down. I mean, he did a great job. And it was the first day that my Washington partner, who runs our Washington office, David Poore, it was the first day on the job. And he thought he was a nervous flyer anyway. He thought, I'm going to die on my first day. I won't make it. But
I don't mean to laugh at someone else's fear, but that's funny story. In Thrall, they got 38 inches of rain in 24 hours. Good. Now, the worst rainstorm goes back to the hurricane that Harvey, and that's when Richmond had 54 inches of rain in 48 hours, 54 inches in 2 days. Wow.
And it just, there's no place that you can go. It's like pouring water out of a bucket. Mm-hmm. And so it's really tough. Second largest was the Rio Grande flood in 1967. Hurricane Beulah came in and hit ground, and then it turned into a tropical storm, and it just sat there on the Rio Grande River, and you wound up over 200,000 people were homeless, and that was 1967. The third was the Hurricane Harvey, and that was in 2017, and the landfall in that year, it came in and then it stalled. And so when a hurricane's moving pretty fast, you get a bad rain, but it's over in a short period of time. But when you get one that stalls or turns into a tropical depression and doesn't have much movement, it becomes very difficult to deal with. But Hurricane Harvey, I remember going down. Texas Tech was playing University of Houston football, and on the Saturday after the hurricane, the week before, went down and I represented a contractor that was getting a contract to move the debris, and we saw people that had their flags out. It's football season. One guy had a double T flag, had a Texas Tech flag, and we stopped, went in there, and his kid was in my class.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so we helped him, move a few things and really had a good visit with him. And he said, when they let the levee down, that part of Memorial just got flooded.
Yeah.
And they were afraid it was going to break, and it would have been worse. But to the people that lived in that neighborhood, it was just tough. And there were 68 deaths that happened in Hurricane Harvey. And then the fourth was Tropical Storm Allison, and it rained 40 inches. And then the fifth was a stalled cold front going in 1998. They had 30 inches of rain in south central Texas where the front stalled. Anytime you get a front that stalls or a tropical depression that stalls, you're going to have major problems, and especially if it's in the hill country. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nothing to slow it down, and it goes so fast. Number 6 was 1913 floods in San Antonio. 180 people died, and they didn't have the ability. They didn't anticipate, what to do about floods as much, and so that's the reason that like you'd have 180 die in the 1913 flood in San Antonio. 1935, several floods on different rivers in Texas. In 1954, you had the Hurricane Alice, and went up along the Rio Grande, and it got up into West Texas, and you had flooding in Del Rio and Ozona. That's how far they can go, and that's how powerful. This last one, we all heard about Kerrville and everything, number of pieces. They had a terrible flood on the north side of San Angelo. Mm-hmm. And so they had a lot of deaths throughout the state, including Travis County and Williamson County and many others. And the Tropical Storm Claudette in 1979 was another one that took a lot of lives. And then Hurricane Ike in 2008, that was Galveston, Houston. And it was a lot of devastation. I think the one thing that's happened as we've gone through these storms and seen them, then the people making the decision on where to rebuild and what to rebuild, just like the seawall in Galveston, and because of the 1900 flood and the hurricane. And so we've made adjustments. State, local, federal governments have made adjustments. But, you take the warnings in the 1900, that you didn't have the warnings.
Right.
Now you've got days of warnings. And I watched the hurricane, it was Tropical Storm Barry, that came in this time. It came in Mexico, came in down to the east of Monterrey, Mexico, and then kind of crossed the Rio Grande, but it really didn't pick up a lot of rain until it stalled in the hill country, and parts of it came in and stalled in San Angelo in that part of the hill country.
Right.
And so it was a devastating event, and the families never get over this, and not only they won't, their relatives won't, but their kids that were friends with these kids that didn't make it. It becomes very difficult, and I just pray for these people that they can make it through this.
You're talking about the kids at Camp Mystic?
Yeah. They had 20-something missing. Now it's over 50 have died, and so it's just tough. And there were some of the questions going to the county judge, and why didn't you, do something about that? That's, Monday morning quarterback. If they had known it was going to be this kind of flood, they would have done other things. They'd shut the camps down or whatever, but they didn't know. Mm-hmm. And when a lot of people on global warming, that they want to say this or that or anything. We don't know in 48 hours what the weather's always going to be. So, how do we know what it's going to be in 48 years? It's
Great point.
Very difficult.
Great point.
Also, this week we had some things that, because of the fireworks, someone did a study of the names of fireworks stands and the different names. Most of them just say fireworks, but some of them have a name, in North Austin fireworks, or so you can locate them. But the two names that I like the best of firelights, number one is Light and Run, the Light and Run firecracker stand. That you don't have to say, well, wonder what they're talking about. It's in Lubbock. There's a gun store called the Second Amendment store. If you don't know what that means, you didn't have civics. Right. Somebody failed to teach you a little. The other was a name that stuck out to me was Neighbor Hater. You buy your fireworks at Neighbor Hater. And also I saw this week on YouTube that if you listen at 1.5 speed, it's pretty easy to do. But if you do 2, it scrambles you. You'll miss a bunch of it. So if you're trying to speed it up so you can hear more, 1.5 is about the best you'll do. And that's been very important. Also, there's a big story out of India. There were 7 engineers that were fired, and they built a suspension bridge, and it had a 90-degree turn out in the middle of it. And, somebody wasn't thinking, or something went way wrong.
Where did they go to engineering school?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope none of them at Texas Tech or UT or A&M or Houston or any of our schools here in the state. Also in California, the police pulled a lady over. She was 69 years of age, and she was speeding. And she had a U-Haul trailer. In the U-Haul trailer, they could hear some sound like cats and everything, and so they opened it, and they found over 100 cats. That's a lot of cats. I don't know how you'd load it. How do you get 100 cats? You could put some food in there, but the time you got the 100 in there, so I think you'd have to have double doors, low doors and high doors. You'd have to catch them and pitch them in there. And they arrested her for cruelty to animals. And
I wonder what she's going or doing with them.
What are you doing with 100 cats?
Yeah.
And stupid criminals. There was one, and this was also in California. It was in Sonoma, north of San Francisco. Guy gets pulled over for suspicion of DWI, and the cop calls for backup. He wants them to come see it. Mm-hmm. And they found 73 empty beer cans in his car. And 7 of them were tall boys. And this guy, I guess he's just collecting his beer cans and everything. But on the breathalyzer, he blew a 2.4, and a 0.8 is drunk. Wow. So he was drunk.
3 times.
3 times.
Wow.
And he was, that's kind of funny, but it's really not funny. But he run over somebody and kill him. Yeah. And so they're going to have to get his license and take it away. Whatever they do. And
clean his car out.
Clean his car. They got all the beer cans out and put them on the hood of his car. In the picture, they took a picture of the cops there with this guy in handcuffs.
Wow.
So, he
kind of hope the guy gets some help too.
Yeah, he needs some help. People around him need some help. Yeah. We're just putting up with him. Also in Florida, there was a valet driver arrested for stealing a car. What he did, this guy goes in, had a real nice car, Lamborghini, and goes into a hotel and gives it to the driver, the valet guy. And he goes in the hotel and meets this guy, and they walk down the street and go to a coffee shop. And they see his car going by real fast. It's his car. It's the owner's car. And the guy was doing a joyride. And they got to checking him, and he was riding all over town and everything. And they finally had him arrested, and he was just going on a joyride. Also, reading a little history this week, that the term First Lady, President Zachary Taylor is the one that came up with that, and he was doing the eulogy at Dolly Madison's funeral, and he called her the First Lady. And that kind of stuck, and ever since then, the president's wife has been the First Lady. Dolly Madison was an unusual, she was somewhat vain. I mean, when the British burnt the White House in the War of 1812, she told, to get things out because they were going to burn it, and told them the last thing she said, be sure you get my portrait. And they saved her portrait. The saying of the day is turn around, don't drown. And that's easy to remember. And just anytime you're dealing with Mother Nature, whether it's a snowstorm or a flood or whatever, don't bet against it. Always think they're going to win this battle, and what do I do to avoid it?